Greetings, everyone, and welcome. It is April the 27th, evening here on a Sunday, busy day in the U.S. And I know, Prof, you've been very busy today. I messaged you a little while ago and asked, did you see any of the Lavrov videos today? You answered no. I said,
I have
great.
not. Church to the swimming pool to the violin lesson with the kids, so it's like one thing after another after another.
Awesome. So this is going to work out perfectly, guys. I have the 7 clips. He hasn't seen them. I've been digesting them all day, putting them in other pieces of information I'm working on. And this is going to be a reaction video. So I'm going to play the clips, and Prof, we'll just get your thought about these 7 statements from Sergei Lavrov. Wrong button. That's the right button. So basically, in a nutshell, Crimea, forget it. And you can see who is sitting in the school desk. We're going to start. The first one, Lavrov tells Face the Nation in perfect English and all the Americans, I read Trump's book on dealing. Here you go.
Others in the Russian government have proposed that the U.S. and Russia could work together in the Arctic. Are there specific areas of discussion for cooperating right now?
You always want me to disclose things.
Well, this was a public statement.
Things which might be discussed by respective officials of Russia and the United States, by those who are responsible for trade, economic cooperation, investments, and so on and so forth. How do you expect a participant of negotiations which are still to reach some kind of specific understanding to disclose details in public? It is not serious.
I'm just asking what you think the potential is.
I read President Trump's book, The Art to Make a Deal, and he doesn't advise to disclose information before it's time.
So I've read The Art of the Deal too. I read this years ago, like 20 years ago. It wasn't that good of a book either. It was a seemingly poorly written book. It was ghostwritten by Tony Schwartz, and it was just kind of following a day in the life of Trump, or like, here's the deals that he's making day over day, or that sort of thing. But okay, I mean, all she's asking was just, do you think something's going to happen, and not, should I disclose or not disclose? But Lavrov's a really savvy guy too. I mean, I don't like him any further than I can throw him, but I mean, he's really good at what he does, unfortunately.
Yes.
So why he's referencing the art of the deal seems more of a nod to stroking Trump's ego than anything having to do with anything along the reasons that he said. So that's just kind of weird.
That's exactly what he's doing. Secondly, before we get into the other clips, I remind you and everyone watching on Professor Gerdes' channel and mine that this was on Face the Nation this morning, and Lavrov is speaking in wonderful English. He will own this entire conversation, and Americans are listening to this. We have nobody on Russian state television from America speaking in Russian to the Russians, I promise you. So here we go. Clip number 2. What about a ceasefire?
Ukraine accepted on March 11th that idea of a U.S. brokered ceasefire without preconditions. You're saying the preconditions are a negotiation to end something else?
No, it is not a precondition. It is the lessons learned after at least 3 times the deals similar to the one which we are discussing now.
Yeah. But Russia has not accepted that call for a ceasefire. The Ukrainian
regime with the strong support from European capitals and Biden administration. If you want a ceasefire just to continue supply arms to Ukraine, so what is your purpose? You know what Kaja Kallas and what's his name, Mark Rutte, said about the
NATO
ceasefire,
Secretary General and the European Union.
They bluntly stated that they can support only the deal which at the end of the day will make Ukraine stronger, would make Ukraine a victor. So if this is the purpose of the ceasefire, I don't think this is what President Trump wants. This is what Europeans, together with Zelensky, want to make out of President Trump's initiative.
There you have it about the ceasefire.
So what they do is they hold up a mirror and they say whatever you're doing, that's what we're doing. That's how they do this all the time. Like they always accuse their opponents of the very thing that they're doing. Oh, Zelensky, you can't trust him to make a deal because he says no to giving up Crimea. Well, you just said no to giving up the other 4 oblasts and Crimea. What? How is that different?
The difference, I think, here is he is on our television in our backyard.
No, I understand, but when he says,
There's-
like what the Russians do is they accuse the other side of exactly the same thing that they're doing very often.
Okay, but completely agree, 100%. My point in this is a win, mega win for Russia when he can come on our television and get that out in English and stroke Trump unchallenged. But
That's the key. That's the problem, because she should have really taken him to task for that. And unless she did in the next clip, that's the problem.
She can't. Okay, I don't know this lady, so no disrespect to her. But in a moment, you're going to actually see Lavrov correct her because she can't even pronounce. Once again, we're back to the Witkoff syndrome. Wait, just wait. All right, let's move to Concessions and J.D. Vance.
From everything you laid out, I haven't heard from you that Russia is willing to make any concession on anything to date.
She called him.
No, my brief answer is you are wrong. I have
What
been.
concessions has Russia
Wait a
offered?
second. Wait a second, please. I have been emphasizing repeatedly, in relation to Ukraine, in relation to strategic relations with the United States, I have been emphasizing our readiness to seek balance of interests. If this is not what your station considers readiness for negotiations, then I don't know how to be even less eloquent in trying to be brief in my answers.
Well, there have been very clear, specific things said by the Trump administration, such as the vice president saying that the current lines of contact in Ukraine would freeze and end up fairly close to where troops are right now. Do you actually consider that a concession?
I don't discuss publicly the details of what is being subject of negotiations. I understand that you love rumors, because rumors are played around.
The Vice President of the United States said it on camera.
It's not frozen.
Was it a question? What did you say?
Well, rumor. You said it was a rumor. The Vice President said it.
No, I said
Perhaps
that we.
you missed it.
No, I said about us. We are not discussing things which are subject to negotiations.
Man, he's good at staying on message.
Dude,
or
he's brilliant.
staying off
I'm
message,
sorry.
as the case may be. Like he's really good at not actually answering the question that was posed to him and then diverting and going a different direction. Like again, he's very good at what he does, unfortunately, from the wrong side.
And she tried to call him on it, but she's completely out of her league. And unfortunately, like this will feed the MAGA side. They'll feed off of this because it'll just stroke, as he's already stroked Trump, and talking about his book. It just fuels into that. All right. And by the way, guys, we're halfway through. We're going to clip 4. Clip 7 is where he talks about Crimea. But clip 4, let's go to Zaparita nuclear power plant. And I will go ahead and tell you to be listening for it. He corrects her on how to pronounce it.
Specific things President Trump has said in public. One of the things he brought up is that the U.S. could work with Ukraine to operate the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, which is in an area, Zaparita. Russians control that area right now. Do you agree with President Trump's public statements that the best security would be for the U.S. and Ukraine to operate that together?
No, we never received such an offer. And if we do, we would explain that the power station, Zaporozhye nuclear power station, is run by the Russian Federation state corporation called Rosatom. It is being under monitoring of the IAEA personnel permanently located on the site. And if not for the Ukrainian regular attempts to attack the station and to create a nuclear disaster for Europe and for Ukraine as well, the safety requirements are fully implemented, and it is in very good hands.
So that's a no.
No, I don't think any change is conceivable.
Okay, because that was in a public statement from the White House to the media.
We as I said, we did not receive any proposal which would be specific. So, you know, I understand that journalists have to speculate. We cannot speculate on something which is really not being mentioned during the negotiations.
Zaparita is not being negotiated right now.
Shall I say it for the third time? You wanted
Well,
me to
I'm
be
trying
brief.
to
You wanted
reconcile
me to be
public
brief.
Holy moly. There's a lot in that minute and a half.
There
You go
was. I'm not
first.
sure which way to go. So first, let's talk about the language. The way he pronounced, the way she pronounced. Tell me about that.
Okay, well, she pronounced it completely wrong, not even close to Ukrainian
Yeah.
or Russian. Complete mistake.
Yeah.
And he corrected her in the Russian way,
That's correct.
Zaporozhye. Okay,
Yeah.
and you're
So
a teacher,
I
you're a
picked
professor.
up on that. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna. Who am I to call somebody out for mispronouncing something, right? But he then said it in the very clearly Russian way, and that
Yes.
sounded very different to my ear even. And so I heard that.
Ukrainian
It's not.
Zaporizhia, Russian Zaporozhia.
Yeah. Okay. So then he was talking about how, well, this is the right. Okay. So we've not gotten any any deal about this. I know that was your deal. Like, I'm not even part of your negotiations. I know from reading about what was in the plan, what was being presented, who did, what. So yeah, they were talking about it, but he's just like dodging it again, artfully. Go ahead.
Well, there's three things I pick up on. Number one, he says that's off limits, basically, because it's already under the operation of Rosatom. And guys, just in case you were wondering, right here, this is Rosatom, and you can go Wikipedia it, but all I need you to see is the founder is Vladimir Putin. It's Vladimir Putin's company. It's not a Russian state company. Vladimir Putin is the founder of Rosatom. So that's what you need to know there. Secondly, the narrative that what Washington is putting out, now that's two things. One was about freezing of the line. Number two now is about Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. He goes, we're not talking about any of those things. And listen, I absolutely tend to agree with him here. I'm sorry, because only Witkoff is going to Russia. And he doesn't even have his own interpreter. You see that magical work from Lavrov? Well, Putin and Dmitriev are even better. So it wouldn't surprise me that they're not talking about it, to be quite honest. I think
So
the
it's in
only
the
thing they're
public
talking
statement.
about
So
is
he-
Crimea. That's it.
It's in the public statement, so he'd have to know about it. Whether Witkoff was smart enough to present it, that's a whole different question. But I won't deal with I know journalists have to speculate. That, I mean, that was over the top. You didn't need to do that.
Let
And he
me
knows
ask
what
you this.
he knows full well what he's doing, trying to punch a hole into her credibility by doing what he just did.
Yes. Now, he's on Face the Nation, and the Americans are watching it, and he is spewing on our network, in our language, in our country, that Ukraine is shelling and trying to create a nuclear disaster.
So that was the last part, right? Like, think about what yesterday was. Yesterday was the 39th anniversary of Chernobyl, right?
Yes.
How would you pronounce it? It spells like Cornable. How would you pronounce
So-
it in Ukrainian?
Chernobyl.
Okay, so it's close. I mean, I didn't realize it
so
was that close. I mean, I just
Russian,
remember reading or hearing about it in the 80s, right? So,
Russian,
okay.
Chernobyl, Ukrainian, Chernobyl.
Okay, so it's
Mhm.
actually, yeah, Chernobyl. Okay. And so, yeah, like that, he was talking about how the Ukrainians are attacking the
Mhm.
nuclear power plant. It was the Russians that hit Chernobyl with a drone that was on fire for 3 weeks.
Correct.
Like, again, it's that mirroring effect that they do. It's just,
And
it's the weirdest thing.
it's on our face the nation in English,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he is owning her. All right, number 5. Let's keep going because I know everybody wants to hear his statement about Crimea. Talking about scheduling a meeting between Putin and Trump. Right? Where is that one at? This one.
So President Trump said he expects to meet soon with Vladimir Putin. What's an acceptable time and location? Why should they meet?
Look, the presidents are masters of their own destiny and of their own schedule. I heard President Trump say that he is planning to be somewhere mid-May, and that after that he would be suggesting some dates. I cannot add anything else.
Right. He said he was asked about meeting with Vladimir Putin specifically in Saudi Arabia, and he said most likely not. That's in mid-May, but shortly thereafter.
You said the same thing as I.
Right. Well, what are you planning?
So we read the same newspapers and watch the same channels on TV.
Right, but I can't pick up the phone and call Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, like you can. What plans are you making for the two to meet?
Look, I hope your listeners understand very well that it is not ethical for a foreign minister to prejudge, to presume what presidents might or might not discuss.
Welcome to the
Well,
big
at least he's got
leagues.
some ethics. I mean, there's something to be said for that. It's a kind of a low bar, but I mean, go ahead.
I have been, and you never want to use the word I, but in this one scenario, I will. Zhenya and I, we have been sharing for 3 years now, more than 3 years, that if you think you understand the Soviet mindset and how they negotiate and how to deal with them, and you can just do it like in some magical way you see on a movie, forget it. You're witnessing right now, and there's 2 more clips, how good they are. And we're sending Witkoff to deal with them. He's in control of that completely. Now,
he'll answer what he wants to answer, dodge what he wants to dodge, and like what he answered, what struck me was that was a speculative question, and then he answered it. But in the previous clip, he refused to answer anything on the grounds that it was speculative. It's very interesting.
I'm telling you, I knew you would enjoy this. That's why I called you this afternoon. All right, 2 more clips, and we are going to Crimea on the last one. But this one is interesting. Talking about arms control, and he puts blame on the United States.
Do you have any interest in arms control talks with the United States, with the Trump administration?
It was the United States which broke the process of strengthening strategic stability, and as if the United States is willing to get back to this track, we would see what are the conditions under which this might be possible. As long as in the U.S. doctrinal documents, we are described as adversary, when the officials in Washington some time ago called us enemy. So we want to understand what Washington thinks of our relationship, and whether Washington is ready for, I would emphasize once again, an equal, mutually respectful dialogue heading to finding a balance of interest. If this is the approach, everything is possible.
Oh my. I mean, we're right back to this again. right? I mean, we're right back to it. So, how many Duma members have been saying the U.S. is Satan or the enemy that needs to be nuked or whatever else? Or I'm sure it's in their documents. It's all. I mean, so, but he's hiding behind it as if the U.S. is somehow the only player here that thinks that somebody else might not be right.
I want to
It's
take that a step deeper for you.
yeah. Go ahead.
He's blaming the Biden administration and saying
Yeah. Well,
they're the ones that broke. And if Washington wants to fix it, we're here. And this is what Trump has been pushing. We're repairing this broken relationship for 3 years, no communications. So in that statement, he's stroking the Trump administration in a roundabout way.
and let me add to that no reset has worked ever. Like Reagan was the last guy that got foreign policy with the Russians right.
Reagan's
Seriously.
the only one that could negotiate with the Russians and outduel them. We don't
Right.
have anybody.
He negotiated and he was willing to walk away if there was a bad deal from Gorbachev, and the left went nuts about that. But he in hindsight, that was the right thing. Every administration since Russia became Russian, the Soviet Union broke up, has been trying to set this reset button with the Russians, and it never works. It just never works. They just don't keep their word, or
We've allowed them to fortify their positions for over 10 years. This has been in prep for decades and decades, even before Reagan. Reagan was a Band-Aid, and then we started going sideways again because it was not the ultimate end. And then this war, we just stopped communicating with them. Now we're going to try to communicate with them again, and it's really, honestly, it's children trying to manipulate the master teacher. And
that was a keen insight, though, that you just had, that they were speaking about the Biden administration, and then Trump followers who were thinking, well, if this was Biden's fault because Trump keeps saying it, they're going to latch onto that on Face the Nation here in the U.S. So that was actually
that is exactly
really
what. And I remind you, it was Biden, and I'm not throwing blame at him. I actually was happy he made this statement. He called him a butcher. He called Putin a butcher. And, relations were broken. So now they're stroking it as in, okay, we'll see if America with Trump wants to fix our relationship. And then he just manipulates that English language there very, very well.
Love to hear what he has to say about Dugin's statements about the United States, because according to Dugin, we should be nuked and we're the devil. So,
well,
until that goes away, I don't think anything else will change. That's the core of it.
Well,
okay.
on
Anyway,
another topic and we'll go into the last one now, but if you're talking about nukes, everybody, you need to keep your eyes on India and Pakistan right now. It's hot. All right, here we go.
Talked about that.
Yeah. The one we've been waiting for, Crimea. It's the large topic. And here you go. I'll just let it play. Buckle your seatbelt.
Why don't you ask me about President Trump's position on Crimea?
You liked what President Trump said about Crimea yesterday when he said that it had been under Russian control since 2014?
It's not about liking or disliking. It's about the fact that he said the truth. And when
so he said something specific you liked.
When Zelensky said that this is absolutely excluded because Crimea is part of Ukraine according to the constitution, nobody in Europe or in the States, by the way, reminded him that apart from territorial issues, the Ukrainian constitution guarantees, I quote, the free development, the use and protection of the Russian and other national minorities' language in Ukraine. And they guarantee the development of ethnic, cultural, language, and religious identity of all peoples and national minorities in Ukraine. This is also in the Constitution, but as I mentioned already, and you decided not to go deeper into this topic, nobody in the West even mentions human rights when they demand that Ukraine defeat Russia in the battlefield.
President Trump said Crimea is not even being discussed right now.
Yes, because this is a done deal.
You mean Russia occupies and controls and will not negotiate the future of Crimea? Is that what you're saying?
Russia do not negotiate its own territory. And,
so that's one
President Trump understands
specific.
Okay,
Telling
its
you,
own
man.
territory. Yeah, we won't negotiate its own territory. And then he says the truth, and she tried to push back with because it's something that you like, right? So she did try, and then he went right into the language issue, which is bizarre. Like everywhere the Russians go, they push Russian, whether you're Estonian or Lithuanian or Ukrainian or whatever it is. But if those people in those countries want laws that have their own language where they live, the Russians they flip out, right? And then he tried to couple the language issue with religious and human rights. Like you look at how religious and human rights are dealt with in other places where the Russians have been, and it's nothing like where the Russians are not. So, okay, what did you see?
I saw the same thing. I saw two things that stuck out to me. Number one was we do not negotiate our own territory and our own lands, and Donald Trump understands this. It's not even up for conversation. And so we'll see what comes from that. But number two is he had the audacity to talk about human rights when they are leveling cities and killing civilians every day. And he's crying on American television in perfect English, human rights violations. That's my big deal right there.
And where's the pushback to say, okay, the first thing to get to a ceasefire is stop with the war crimes of hitting civilian buildings and killing people while they sleep. That should be like just level one before we talk about anything else. But there's not even that kind of pushback.
That goes back to what he said on the other day, a couple of days ago, where if civilian targets are struck, it's because they're military targets.
They then are converted magically into
that's exactly right.
Target.
That's exactly right. So unfortunately, I mean, God bless that lady, but she was completely out of her league. And listen, she's a pro on Face the Nation. I'm not against her, but dealing with Lavrov, I would much rather it be me or you asking questions, because I would have instantly asked that. Well, let's talk about human rights, and let's talk about Sumy, and let's talk about Kryvyi Rih, and let's talk about strikes on hospitals, and go into the detail. But we don't have nobody that will push back in mainstream media. So thankful for what we're doing.
Apparently, in this administration, which is sad, and that's why we're getting what we're getting. Newt Gingrich said the system that you have is perfectly geared to give you what you're getting, and that's what we're getting right now.
That is what we're getting.
A system that is demanding that we're getting what we're getting.
Well, we'll close with this. Marco Rubio also said this morning that this week will be very important. He also said that a week ago. He also said in 3 days we'll have a decision made. Trump said in 24 hours, and in 3 days, and 100 days. But we see that last week was very important, and a lot of things unfolded. It was interesting, the timing of the passing of the Pope that allowed a meeting to happen between Zelensky and Trump. It would have never happened without the passing of the Pope. But we're seeing that, unfortunately, we're not seeing too much of a zag on the zig. This week will be very important. So, but that's
a little zag, not a lot of zag. I wish there was more zag, but we'll see how that's all going to play out. Still, I'm not confident that we're going to see a lot more zag.
No, if I had to project right now, the United States is on the way out the door in regard to this situation. Just my guess. I don't try to speculate,
we just don't know.
But we'll see. Thank you, Prof. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and the 7 comments of Lavrov. So be blessed. Catch you later.
All right.